So basically, welcome everyone to our webinar on design for climate change and resilience. This is a series of webinars that the Heritage and Cultural Identity Work Program have been having on the range of themes that the UIA World Congress will be having. So to this end, this is our penultimate webinar that we'll have in this series. And I have the pleasure of welcoming our Secretary General, Pei Ying, to share with us a few remarks before we start the webinar. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you. My warmest greeting from the International Union of Architects. I'm Pei Ying Tan, the Secretary General, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to this important webinar on design for climate adaptation and resilient communities. I would like to express our gratitude to the organizing committee members of the Cultural and Heritage Work Program, especially co-directors Muhammad Habib Reza and Kasim Mumba Omar for their leadership in making this event possible. I also extend my appreciation to our presenters and moderators whose valuable contributions have made this webinar possible. Lastly, I would like to acknowledge the efforts of our UIA Secretariat team, Sonia, Muyati, and Claudia, for their hard work in coordinating and promoting this event. The theme of this webinar is particularly relevant in today's world, where climate change is one of the most pressing challenges facing our planet. The impacts of climate change are far-reaching, affecting not only the environment, but also social, economic, and cultural fabric of our communities. Design professionals have a critical role to play in mitigating and adapting to these effects. By building resilient communities, they are responsive to the unique needs of each community. A resilient community is one that can adapt to change and recover quickly from shocks and stresses, enabling residents to return to their daily lives as soon as possible after an event. In the context of climate change, this means developing sustainable strategies and adaptable solutions that reduce vulnerabilities and increase the ability to cope with extreme weather events, sea level rise, and other climate-related impacts. This can be achieved through a combination of measures, such as disasters preparedness, early warning systems, and resilient green infrastructure. Sustainable urban planning is also critical, including the provision of affordable housing, community centers, and emergency shelters that provide residents with access to essential services and amenities. All of these factors are crucial in creating communities that are not only better able to withstand disruptions, but also more sustainable, equitable, and livable over the long term. This webinar will explore how design can support climate adaptation and creation of resilient communities while preserving our cultural heritage. Our esteemed presenters and moderators will share their experience and insights on how design can help us to mitigate and adapt to the effect of climate change. We thank all of you for joining this webinar, and we look forward to your active engagement in the fruitful discussion. The outcomes from this event will be integrated into the UIA Copenhagen World Congress discussions, which will further contribute to the global conversation on climate change and the built environment. And thank you.
Thank you, our Secretary General Pei Ying, for those insightful remarks that give the stage for our webinar. And before moving on, I can see my co-director has just joined in. So I think I'll pass on the floor to him to continue with the program and invite the first moderator for the session. Mohammed.
Yes, thank you, Kasim. I'm back, and sorry for the interruption. And well, thank you, Pei Ying, for your generous space, and it was live. And what you have done within your busy schedule is really remarkable for our work program. And as usual, your remarks were always insightful and thought-provoking. So it will guide us always. Now, I'm pleased to introduce our webinar moderator, architect Edward Liuan. He's an accomplished architect with expertise in modern architecture, commercial design, and heritage conservation projects. Architect Liuan notable achievements includes the award-winning restoration of Bank de la Indochina and the adaptive use of Tong Lao into an art and community center. He served as the chair of the Heritage and Conservation Committee of the Hong Kong Institute of Architects from 2017 to 2019, and is currently an assistant professor at the Hong Kong Institute of Education and Sustainable Development. Architect Liu Wang has presented his research on Chinese mixed Western architecture at conferences and co-written books on sustainable revitalization. As co-director of the Heritage and Cultural Identity Work Program of UIA, I am thrilled to have Architect Liu Wang as our moderator. His knowledge, experience, and passion for sustainable design makes him a valuable asset to this discussion. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Architect Edward Liu Wang for the
Hello.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Edward Leung from the Hong Kong Institute of Architects. Thank you for our co-directors and also for our Secretary General for opening this and organizing this webinar. This webinar has been organized for quite some time because we want to collect a special perspective of heritage conservation. You may notice the three speakers of tonight are specially invited to give a special angle on what we call heritage conservation. Maybe not the normal type we see a glorious building that is being conserved or being restored, but nonetheless a very important aspect of heritage of the people. We can see that whether in the urban area or in the villages or in the rural areas, the communities of today's, in particular, the traditional communities in these areas are facing a lot of challenges, either from development or climate changes, which our three speakers are specialized in studying this aspect. So let me now introduce our first speaker, Liu Deyu from mainland China. He is a renowned professor of architectural history in Tsinghua University in Beijing. And I know that he is specialized in vernacular architecture. I've read some of his articles, very insightful ones on discussing what is vernacular architecture in the context of China and Asia. And he has written a lot of books, and also especially he has got on-hand experience on some of the projects in the rural areas, which today he is going to share with us one of these special cases. This case is a World Heritage Site in the terrace fields in mainland China in the remote areas. In this presentation, he will tell us not only about the buildings that these traditional people build, but the environment they are struggling to protect in this changing environment. I think all three presentations of tonight will gear us up much better in integrating heritage conservation with sustainable environment, which are getting us better prepared for our Congress in Copenhagen in a couple of months' time. So now, without further delay, let me introduce Professor Law. Thank you.
Thank you, Leo, and it's my greatest honor to have this opportunity to share my understanding on one of the most famous World Heritage Site. And let me share my PPT first. Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay. Hi. Dear colleagues, it's my greatest honor to share my understanding on the space and society of Hong Kong honey rice terraces. This speech is completed by me and my grad student Wen Tang, and the title is From Fire Pit to Terraces, the Cohesion in Honey Society. Let's have a general impression for the beauty of honey terraces. It is a landscape of sunrise. The rice terraces are covered by 6 white clouds. Here we can see the beautiful scene 180 days a year. There are 6 parts in this speech. The first one is outstanding universal value of honey terraces as World Heritage. The Hong Kong honey rice terraces were listed as a World Heritage Site in 2013. They cover about 99 square kilometers and there are 82 villages with a population of about 10,000. In 2002, a report from SACH, which is State Administration of Cultural Heritage of China, pointed out that the core value of honey terraces lies in 4-in-1 elements. The 4 elements are forest, village, terrace, and water. The terraces are cultivated by people who live in the villages. The people are using water from the forest to fulfill their daily life, and they build canals and water mills to irrigate terraces. The terraces produce rice to feed the hardworking people. The water ran down to the river after it goes through the rice terraces. Finally, the water in the river will go up to the sky and then become rain that go back to the forest. This whole system embodies the ecological significance of 4-in-1 elements. However, there are terraces in many places in the world, and many of them have the phenomenon of 4-in-1 elements. For example, Ifugao terraces in Philippines, which were listed on World Heritage Site in 1995. So, what on earth is the outstanding universal value of honey terraces? Or what's the special point of honey terraces that is different from all the other ones? Through comparison, we have found a great difference between honey terraces and Ifugao terraces. The rich length of honey terraces is much longer than that of Ifugao terraces. It often reaches over 2 kilometers. This is why honey terraces look more spectacular. At an altitude from 600 to 2,000 meters, there are terrace fields everywhere with few trees inside. While in Ifugao terraces, we can see more scattered forests inside the terraces. The yellow part and green part in this map are terraces and forests, respectively. We can see that in this region, the yellow ones are much larger than the green ones. How did this happen? The answer is that all hillsides, if they can, have been cultivated into terraces. Where there are no rice terraces, it is either a low place that is too dry for rice growing, or a high place where the temperature is too low for rice growing. Such a large-scale development of terraces represents a kind of extreme but sustainable use of nature by human beings. It also shows that human society can achieve an extremely strong cohesion in terms of organization. The second part is fire pit, cohesion, and honey house. A traditional honey family consists of 3 generations. Normally, a honey house would provide rooms for 2 couples and 1 youngster. This is why there are only 2 small bedrooms within the main part of a honey house. The general pattern of honey house is reflected in features as below. 1. Livestock and the people. Farm cattle are necessary for honey terraces, and honey houses also provide housing for cattle. The climate in the middle and high mountainous areas of Honghe Prefecture is quite humid, and living on the ground floor is not good for people's health, but it is a suitable place for cattle because it is much better than outside. People thereafter live on the second floor. 2. Wooden structure and earthworks. The beams, columns, floors, stairs, and partition walls of honey traditional houses are all made of wood. The wood is taken from forests. The walls used as enclosure system are mainly made of earth materials, such as rammers or adobe masonry. The soil is taken from terraces. 3. Four slopes grass roof. The annual rainfall in the middle and high mountainous areas of Honghe Prefecture exceed 1,000 millimeters. The flat roof is not conducive to the drainage of rainwater, while the four slope roof is more suitable. The roof is made of local material. 4. Fire pit as the center of house. Fire pit is an essential element of honey house. It plays an important role in both practical life and spiritual belief. There are 3 functions of fire pit. The first is to be used as a cooking utensil. The second is to keep out the cold. The third is for moisture proof. When honey people stay at home, except for sleeping, they spend most of their time by the fire pit. The space around the fire pit also became the living room in honey house. The family life of honey people is centered around the fire pit. The roof is made of rice straws from the terraces or thatches from the forest. The third part is sacred forest and Springfield and cohesion in a honey village. There is always forest located on top of a honey village and terraces at the bottom. Between the village and the forest, honey people choose a certain area as the holy woods, whose function is to protect the whole village. Meanwhile, honey people would choose a relatively flat field between the village and the terraces as Springfield. Hollywoods and Springfield are the two most important places in the honey village. One points to the forest above, and the other points to the terraces below, connecting the villagers with their living space, both spatially and spiritually. Hollywoods and Springfield cannot be defined as architecture, but they both played important roles in the spatial structure of the honey village. How do honey people highlight the special status of Hollywoods and Springfield that looks almost the same as other places? The answer is festival and sacrifices. Honey people celebrate the Spring Festival in Hollywood before they are busy plowing. They celebrate the Summer Festival at Springfield before they are busy harvest. The ceremonies of these two festivals are very complicated. In this way, they have constructed the ideological spatial structure of a honey village and shown people's serious attitude. Almost every step in the ceremony is for safety and prosperity. The collectivity is emphasized in this ritual rather than an individual. Honey people scrupulously carry out the ritual handed down by their predecessors. This is also the process of integrating individual into a collectivity. The fourth part is funeral and cohesion in honey villages. The honey terraces are not the result of a few villages' labor, but the joint effort from all the honey people around the terraces. Therefore, it is not enough to have the internal cohesion inside a single village. There must be a connection between different villages. Funeral plays an important role in this connection. Honey people have a strong dependence on farm cattle. They see cattle not only as production tools, but also partners in working and living life. What's more, they regard the cattle partners in their next life. According to the tradition of honey people, farm cattle should be slaughtered at funeral to accompany the deceased to another world. In addition to the cattle prepared by the host family, the relative in-laws of the deceased would also present the cattle as sacrifices, which is called pulling cattle. When these people pull cattle to express their condolence, they cannot come alone. Instead, representatives from one village would come together as a team. Since the relation by marriage is the matter of two generations, many families and villages are involved in this event. This means that each funeral is a party of some nearby village. We can make a simple calculation. The World Heritage Site of honey terraces include 82 villages around 10,000 people. Assuming that in traditional time, each village had 120 people, and the average life expectancy was 60 years old. Then a village would hold 2 funerals in a year. If 5 villages attended each funeral, then there will be 10 villages participating in funeral parties in 1 year. For the entire honey terraces of Honghe Prefecture, a total of 164 funerals will be held every year. Such events would have continued for hundreds of years, and these 82 villages have been formed into a large unity that is closely connected. Great collective cooperation across villages has extraordinary significance for terrace settlements, since it is a key factor for large-scale reclamation and irrigation. The fifth part is altitude distribution and cooperation in ethnics. There are different ethnic groups living in honey terraces. Honey ethnic make up 55% of population in this area. The other includes Yi, Zhuang, Dai, Yao, Miao, and Han ethnics. These ethnic groups have 2 features in their residence. The first is the formation of ethnic settlements. That is, the majority of residents in one village belong to one ethnic group. The second is the altitude distribution. That is, the settlements of different ethnic groups are located in different altitude range. Honey people live in the middle and high mountainous area with an altitude of 14 to 1800 meters. Yi ethnic and Han ethnic people live in area with an altitude of 1000 to 1600 meters. Thai ethnic people live in river valleys at the altitude of 600 meters or lower. According to research, the phenomenon of altitude distribution has a lot to do with the climate of Honghe Prefecture and the adaptability of different ethnic groups to the climate, especially the rainforest. These climate zones have different temperatures and humidity. Thai people who have adapted to the hot and dry climate and low altitude cannot live in cold and humid mountainous areas of middle and high altitude. Hani and Yi people who are accustomed to the middle and high mountainous area also find it difficult to bear the hot weather on the banks of the Honghe River. The altitude distribution has enabled ethnic groups to cooperate in the development of terraces, making the terraces more extremely used and developed. The sixth part is intensive farming and individual resilience. The perfect use of Hani terraces shows that local agriculture has achieved a high degree of intensive cultivation. A family is the unit of production. All family members who are able to work, from teenager to the elderly under the age of 60, must participate in agricultural production. The elderly over 60 basically withdraw from agricultural work, and their main job is to educate their offspring and assist in housework. In traditional time, when there was no compulsory education, children have to help herd cattle when they reach 6 or 7 years old, which could be seen as a part of terrace production. Both men and women have to bear heavy and boring labor in Hani terraces, which require a strong individual resilience. To a great extent, their resilience comes from the care from family and villages. At the level of family, after working all day, the family would gather around the fire pit to enjoy dinner and chatting. This brings warmth and comfort to each member. At the level of village, the annual festival held regularly in Hollywoods and Springfield, as well as the irregular funeral events, have given each villager a strong sense of identity and confidence in facing hardship. The final page is the conclusion. Although Hani people live in a place far away from the center of civilization, they rely on a strong collective cohesion and extraordinary individual resilience to maximize the use of their limited labor. They have created the most spectacular terraces in the world, and their settlements and houses are harmoniously integrated with nature. Thank you all.
Okay, thank you, Professor Low. Thank you for your presentation. It was actually very useful for us modern architects. It is pretty rare that we have a chance to hear how traditional people in the rural area, how do they protect their environment against the changing context, and they should be prepare us very good for the rest of this session, and also prepare us very good for the coming Congress. So we'll leave all the Q&A to the end. I can also invite all the members of the audience, if they have any questions, send them to the chat line. Our secretary will collect them, and we moderators will read through them and go through them at the Q&A time. Okay, so may I introduce our second speaker, Athena Chow. I've known Athena for a number of years. She is an architect who is interested in both heritage aspect and also modern architecture. Her interest, apart from heritage architecture, is also on environment in high density urban environments. She also worked her current other special field apart from the environment, is also on barrier-free access and accessibility. And she also received a scholarship for outstanding academic ability from the Cambridge University in 2019. She used to be the chair of the Hong Kong Institute of Architects. And her presentation today is on the other extreme, is in the urban areas. A lot of us may doubt whether in the high density urban area, what is there to do with the environment and what is there to do with heritage conservation. Indeed, in the city of Hong Kong, we have many pre-war settlements of communities who has been there for generations. And in the pressure of high urban density and commercial development, the city are developing fast, and also compounded with climate change. There's actually a lot that we architects can do to study how we can help. So this is how we may learn from the experience of Athena. So may I now invite Athena to make her presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Edward. Let me share my screen. Hi, everyone. It was my pleasure to have the opportunity to present one of my work, which recently completed in last summer. And the study is about the impact of climate responsive design on urban renewal in Hong Kong. As all of you must know, climate change has been a pressing issue in the world, and Hong Kong is no exception. And many building professionals have increasingly concerned about sustainability. However, majority of the measure is focusing on individual building environmental performance rather than the holistic neighborhood. This is especially the case in urban renewal district, where the adaptation and response to address climate change is totally in isolation of the neighborhood due to like the complexity, which I'm going to explain in my following slides. And with the limited availability of the land, the pressure to redevelop the existing neighborhood is unavoidable. But in the last few decades, much of our city tradition, urban fabric has been transformed, and all the like neighborhood identity, the sense of community, is start diminishing during this redevelopment process. Therefore, in my research, two of the focus is I want to identify what is the climate response design adopt in three predominant housing typology in Hong Kong, which I will introduce in a minute, and also to examine how older people, since like all districts are dominated by older people, so I will want to see the response from older people, particularly sensitive to their local environment, how they perceive these changes in their community. And in the following presentation, I will introduce the selected site, and then I will explain what is the three most predominant housing typology in Hong Kong. Following, I will explain the methodology of my study, and then I will go into the research finding, my questionnaire survey and field observation, and we'll come to my conclusion and recommendation. I have conducted a case study of Sam Shui Po, Hong Kong. This is one of the oldest and most densely populated districts in Hong Kong with the highest ratio of elderly people. And the old center part of Sam Shui Po is developed between 1910 and 1960. And the reason for I select this area is because I want to pick a site where we could easily find three typology within close proximity in order to eliminate any geographic factor that might affect the people perception of the climate friendly feature in their neighborhood. So if you see on the screen, the one marked with number 1 is actually the old center of Sam Shui Po. And the second, the area further down closer to the sea is the area public housing estate, which is the second part. And then the third one is the newest development I'm going to introduce. And these three developments are all within 20 minutes walking distance from each other. So the first typology I want to introduce is called the private single building, which is the single block in short. This is a predominant form of building in the urban area, which is really commonly seen. And most of this PSB is constructed before the 1960. And mostly you could see they are like 5 to 9 story high. And at the ground level, you will always see a lot of shops. And interestingly, on the right-hand side of the image, we will have some like retractable shops, which is like a pop-up semi-temporary and permanent kind of setting. And this is all a low-rise neighborhood. And if you look at the map, this is a highly permeable fine street grain and setup, which promote pedestrian connectivity as well as contribute to the street vibrancy. However, the downside of this kind of like really small street grid is it causing a lot of like serious traffic problem, such as the really busy road network, illegal parking, lack of open space, etc. The next typology is the same typology, but it's another diagram I'm trying to show it. In the old district, it's quite commonly seen during the development. We will see this kind of like pop-up tower happening in the middle of all the low-rise building. One of the reasons is because like after 1960, the building regulation in Hong Kong have allowed an increased buildable floor area ratio, which in order to address the new influx of immigrants, so they want to build taller within the same footprint. And you will suddenly see like 30 to 40 story building construct in the middle of a low-rise neighborhood after the redevelopment. And they are all individually owned by different developers. So there isn't a holistic planning in how the area should be redeveloped. The next typology I want to introduce is called the PRH, the public housing estate, which is a multiple single block development. And again, this is almost found in every district in Hong Kong. And the characteristic of this PRH typology is a cluster of housing block, typically situated like directly on the ground level, like all the building, the tower will just rest on the ground. And in this public housing development, Hong Kong is following Housing Authority Planning Design Guideline with reference to open space, shopping area, market, community centers, social welfare, recreation facility, etc., etc. So they all come with a set standard in all of this housing estate, depends on the population and the area. And another characteristic of the PRH is that because it's housing a really high density of population, it always have really good connection to the public transportation, including the metro, as well as bus or minivan, etc. In the next image, you could see and you could feel the density of this development, and commercial facility, such as the form of shopping center, have been introduced in the public housing estate after the 1980s. The third typology I want to introduce to you is called the PHE, private housing estate. This typology, the characteristic, if you've seen in the photo, it's a podium tower type of development. It's always a privately developed project, and it's a mass housing development. Normally, this kind of development, as you see on the plan, it occupies a large parcel of land, and it's often located quite close to the railway line or in the reclaimed land in the urban area. In this podium tower typology, what happened is the tower as shown in the diagram, they are residential tower, can go up to like 50 to 70 story easily in Hong Kong. And it's commonly seen that they would be sitting on a 3 to 4 story podium super block. And what inside this super block podium is a shopping center as well as a clubhouse. And in this area, which going to see in the next slide, you will see some podium garden surrounding the tower. And the whole development is privately managed with high security. And another characteristic, which I forgot to mention earlier, is it always have a direct connection from the MTR station, from the tunnel into the development. So in my study, the methodology adopt as an explanatory sequential mixed method design that I used. And the quantitative data was collected through a questionnaire survey of all the people in free housing neighborhoods in the Sumshui Pole. And then I have designed a questionnaire survey based on the WHO Global Age-Friendly City Guideline, which they have a good list of attributes. And I have to like slightly modify it to suit the Hong Kong condition for my survey use. And then in the second qualitative phase, I have conduct a focus group as well as a field observation to validate the result from the questionnaire survey as well as from the focus group interview. This is extract of some of the research findings from the questionnaire survey for the free typology of housing neighborhood. And it's quite interestingly, because if you look at the physical environment and the social environment, the PSB, which is in the old district area, for the physical environment, it scores substantially much lower than the public housing or the private housing neighborhood. But if you look at the social participation, actually the old district area isn't performed too bad. It's actually better than the PHD, which is the private housing development. And more interestingly, when you look at the sense of community, the private neighborhood indeed have the lower sense of community, seeing from the perspective of the participant. And both the old district as well as the public housing district, the PRH and the PSH, have a much higher sense of community satisfaction out of this survey result. And during the field observation, because this interesting, going back, yeah, this interesting questionnaire survey result made me want to do another field observation to validate the result and to understand better why have this really interesting finding. This is an image showing the housing typology for the private single building. You can see they have a really vibrant streetscape. Most of the shops, development are external, and there's a less control to the environment. But then you can see the response from the local community is a really organic way. They will have like the umbrella open if during a rainy day, and they will close like the umbrella or the brisole if on a sunny day. So the whole response, climate response, is a really organic means, which is quite different to the new private project. Later you see in the next slide. And this typology, which is the public housing typology, they have adopted a semi-outdoor and indoor climate response strategy. And this development, they have really have a really strong sense of neighborhood identity within the estate itself. And across the whole neighborhood, they have installed some permanent environmental friendly features. For example, they have like put in the wet market, which you see in the old district. Normally they are sensitive to climate or outdoor, but in the public housing estate, they have actually put the wet market and the dry market into an air conditioning environment. So it's all weather control. While the connection to different part of the building, a residential tower, they always provide a covered walkway, which is semi-open. So you could have an interaction with the outside environment while still enjoy a weather protected route throughout the whole estate. And this is something the public housing estate have been doing really well in the development. The next one is an example of the private housing estate. They are having a completely different strategy from the public housing estate. And the way they do is a spatial segregation from the exterior. In terms of like weather control, it was 100% fully weather protected area. If you see in the diagram, if you come off from the metro station, you could just go underground, exit the station, and go inside the shopping mall directly. And inside the shopping mall, there would be shuttle lift directly go up to the blue tower on top. So the whole journey is all indoor and it's all within a total control environment and is not affected by the climate at all. But the interaction with the exterior is really minimal compared to the previous two typology. The next observation I discovered, which is really interesting, is about the accessibility to outdoor spaces. In public housing estate, during my field observation, you can see they have a variety of climate-friendly outdoor spaces that suit different weather conditions. The first image is showing sitting out area with pavilion and canopy, and they have some outdoor gym places. And in order to activate all these like public square and spaces, they would put in, which is the yellow bit in my diagram, all these community functions, such as like the elderly center, youth center, kindergarten, all the daily welfare necessity thing for the resident to enjoy. They will always locate at the ground floor. So the whole estate atmosphere is all activated and stimulated by this supporting function, rather than just a dead space. And this is a completely opposite strategy. In the private housing estate, you could see the garden. They have a really beautifully luxury private garden on top of the podium. And this podium normally is about 50 meters from the ground street level. And you can see on top of this garden, they have like all the private sitting area. But interestingly, there's no cover landscape area in this private development setting, which is really common because in Hong Kong, any cover sitting area would be floor area countable. So the private developer would normally not provide anything with cover. During my visit, it was actually have a light rain that day. That's why you see the whole garden is so empty. And actually, I went another day, which is a normal sunny day. But again, it's really empty as well. Surprisingly, a huge podium garden, but actually there's no one using the garden area. And I'm going to explain a bit the rationale behind. And on the images, you can see this area is highly secure and with all the gates. So unless you're the resident with a special card to bid in, you're not allowed to go in. And actually that day when I take the photo, the security guard has been watching me as well, because like I'm not supposed like to be in that area, but just happened like one of my friends is living in the same complex. So I got proper access to it. And this is an image showing what happened in the old district area. Again, it's about the outdoor spaces, but in the old district area, there's a lack of formal outdoor sitting spaces. And you could see, like in the first image, there's a lot of people just sitting on the carton boxes next to a government building. And then on the right-hand side, which is a new development in the old area, people just sitting like along the curb, planted randomly. And the middle one is the only sitting out area in that district, and it's right next to the metro station. And you see like quite a lot of like old gentlemen is sitting and chatting with each other. All this area is really temporary and spontaneous, the hangout pattern. But I think like it's really primitive as well. But the interesting thing is you could see there's a lot of like informal interaction between the people. And the people actually don't mind sitting at all this area because I speak to one of them and they said, actually they have nothing to do at home. So they rather just came out and sit on the street and able to see what people are doing and chit chat with each other to kill the time. So it's quite funny and interesting seeing in this old urban area. And the next slide, I want to share an observation is the vanishing of neighborhood identity when the old region start redeveloping into a bigger and bigger development. The first image you could see, and you could feel it like from the image, it's a really vibrant, organic, and with a strong district character. And when it become like a public housing estate, it still carry the strong supporting community neighborhood atmosphere. But when it turn into a private sector, everything become really rigid, start disconnecting from the exterior. And the design is really homogeneous with like really luxury pool, garden inside. And it's really typical in Hong Kong. And I spoke to like a couple of people on the street and the resident. And some of them will say, oh, we have a clubhouse in my estate, but they don't even use it. No matter they have like all the program, bowling, gym, kids corner, study room, they just didn't really use it. And for the people living in the like older district, you would have thought they might find the area with poor hygiene, lack of public space not really appealing. But then when I talk to the people, they actually really love the area and really see themselves being part of the community, being part of the Sam Shui Po resident. And this strong sense of community is strongly felt during my site visit. So now came to my conclusion and recommendation part. I think policy support is really important and essential in offering a clear design guideline and requirement for this kind of like redevelopment in old district. Among the old neighborhood typology, I believe the public housing estate is one of the really successful housing typology, which able to strike the balance between a really climate-friendly design as well as not losing the quality of a public realm environment. And the design element and facility, I believe, should have a clear design policy and guideline and standard to govern the quality. I think this is what the public housing has been adopting. And for the private housing estate, it all depends on the developer's self-motivation, whether they would want to do a better neighborhood. And there isn't any specific legislation or standard in Hong Kong that enforce the private sector have to follow. So most of the development in the old district are market-driven. And the neighborhood characteristic consideration are normally really rare. So I would suggest legislation or lease from the government to enforce neighborhood-friendly design in private sector and might be one of the options I should be considered. And the second reason for the lack of motivation to do a better neighborhood from the private sector is because Hong Kong is extremely sensitive to any gross floor area and provision. Therefore, we will need to have some incentive for the private sector to actually provide some facilities, some really basic ones, just like a cover area, like a pavilion, so people could enjoy all the outdoor facility in different kind of weather situation. So the second recommendation is about the housing typology. During my study, I find that the physical setting of housing typology can create social segregation as well as decrease the social and civic participation. This is particularly evident in the private housing estate. Respondents rate that all the social aspect is substantially lower than those living in the public housing or in the old district. And you look at the image, which is one of the aerial photo taken, is showing the podium private garden, which is a totally gated and self-contained community without any connection with the outdoor. One of the reasons is because of the really stringent security arrangement, which create a really high barrier for the community to come to enjoy and to share the spaces. So I would recommend one of the options we could consider is because of the low usage in this kind of private and podium garden, as well as it leading to social segregation within such a close proximity of area, which is only 20 minutes from the other poorer neighborhood. We may consider to open the podium garden for the public use during non-peak hour, or to connect this kind of like public open spaces together with these private open spaces, like can be designed might be in close proximity. So they could have some social interaction within the district to help to integrate the people from the different classes together rather than start having this segregation and discrimination from each other. The third point I want to make is about the sense of community. Sense of community is associated with the perception of the places. And places is all about the memory, landmark, building design. And urban renewal, we understand that it's an essential process for an international city like Hong Kong. And with the redevelopment, new public spaces, amenity to improve the welfare of the resident, there's no doubt in this. But then if not doing it properly, the social tie and the network and the community connection will be damaged. And we have seen a lot of failed cases with the urban renewal replace all the old building with the new huge podium type development, which erode all the street life formed by these old, small, tiny shops in the district. And also it's increased a lot of living costs in the long run for the people as well. And I think the government should identify the old urban fabric that all the people have all the common shared memory, which create the vibrant street life. And during the redevelopment process, it should take into consideration of what should be kept and what is essential to the district. And one example is to increase the neighborhood diversity, we could always intervene daily activity, different kind of spatial uses into the urban setting. And I think like as a planner or design professional, we should always have the duty to bear this in mind in the development process. Lastly, I hope like the study I did would be able to lead to some future study in terms of the planning mechanism, which would help to promote a more environmental friendly neighborhood without compromising the neighborhood characteristic, which is really valuable to our city. And the second point I want to make is neighborhood specific design guideline and assessment tool with clear measurable parameters shall be developed in order to encourage the adoption in the different housing typology rather than one size fit all concept. So that's the end of my presentation. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Athena, for the informative presentation. And it was really great to know many details about Hong Kong, especially the housing typologies and how its impact on the image making of the city for the neighborhood is really thought-provoking. And I think it will be helpful for the people around your country, but also it will be helpful for other countries. So for example, Bangladesh, India, and the many other developing countries who are developing towards your typologies. And we know in future we'll face the similar things, but we can understand these problems now. And I think there will be many questions, and moderator will collect it soon, and we'll discuss this later. But thanks for the presentation. And let me introduce our other moderator, Anju Malla Pradhan, an accomplished Nepali architect who has made significant contribution to the field of architecture in her country and beyond. Anju Malla is a council member of Region 4 of UIA and the immediate past president of the Society of Nepalese Architects. She was the first woman to hold this position. One of her notable achievements is the launch of the Women in Architecture Forum. And she also served as a jury member of national and international design competitions. Anju Malla has authored several articles and served as the editor of Praxis, a magazine dedicated to art, architecture, and the environment. As an active member of the US Heritage and Cultural Work Program, Anjumala is passionate about preserving the cultural heritage of our country and the world. And we are really blessed to have Anjumala in our team for this webinar. And she was really behind the all activities of this program. And I have welcome Anjumala, please, if you take the lead. Thank you.
Thank you, Muhammad. Hello, everyone. Namaste from Nepal. Today, for a change, we are talking about architecture, which focuses on the mass, away from individual buildings, iconicity, and high-end clientele. The world is supposed to meet the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030. Conservation of cultural landscapes with livelihood of local communities intact, climate-sensitive housing, again with identities intact, is the call of the day. Architecture for the community at the local level, sustenance, use of locally sourced construction materials, revival of local skills and knowledge systems that was the epitome of sustainability since time immemorial, is the key to resilience and climate adaptation. As we are talking about conservation sector, adaptive reuse and modern technologies combined results in comfortable living at par with changing and challenging times. Let us all opt for and work towards building resilient communities, happy and healthy communities, humane societies for a much better tomorrow, keeping identities intact. We've been moving from the green rural terrains of China to the congested urban settings of Hong Kong. Now let's move more towards the south to Malaysia. Our next speaker, Dr. Wan Srihani Wan Muhammad from Malaysia, holds a diploma in architecture from the Mara Institute of Technology and a postgraduate diploma in architecture and urban design from Oxford Brookes University in March 1999. She joined the University Putra, Malaysia as a lecturer, where she continues to teach, conduct research, and provide consultancy services in the Department of Architecture. She has also served on the editorial board of the Housing Research Center Bulletin. Her doctoral research investigates the potential of low-tech prefabrication resources for self-built housing systems among low-income groups in Kedah, Malaysia. She is currently researching the development of low-tech prefabricated systems for Aboriginal housing construction with a focus on enhancing livelihood resilience. Her topic today is Community Self-Help Approach Towards Sustainable Conservation in Rural Areas of Malaysia. The full floor is yours, Dr. Wan. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you, Anju. Right. Hello. Let me share the screen right now. Okay. Okay. Hello. First and foremost, I would like to thank the organizer and the introducer very much for inviting me to speak in this platform, sharing my exploration on alternative housing sector. It is actually a great honor, particularly as I know there are many more qualified people than me. And for tonight, we'll be looking into community self-help approach towards sustainable conservation in rural areas of Malaysia, of which the topic is actually an experiment from my PhD research. But before we go into what it is, there is a certain platform, a certain basis, a definition that I need to be clear for everyone to understand what self-help and self-built housing is about. So in here, the most popular definition would be on the self-help housing is primarily associated with the housing process itself, where participants use their labor and skills either in organized or spontaneous abilities to produce their own dwellings, whereas self-built housing, which is more on technical, more on alternative construction method in providing immediate shelter or houses to low-income households. So the experiment actually began in year 2005, of which it is on the basis, the principles that has been laid by Walter Seagull in the UK. So its aim is actually to design a system that encourages self-built process in providing a house. So from here, what I did was that based on the early investigation whereby there were 500 respondents I selected in the rural area, and I studied on basically the perception of self-built housing, their own perception, their preferences of materials, combined with some general knowledge and skills on their construction. So what is RTA? RTA stands for Ready to Assemble Self-Built Housing System. It is like a DIY, and we know that back in 1908, 100 over years ago, Sears catalog has already published, sold houses through posting, and it's just that for this particular system, it is a prefabricated system with a low technology, and it is where a lot of the components are made and built based on the locally available materials, and they are in modular components. Okay. So there are a few principles or concepts of RTA which needs to be complied. First, of course, is the grid that is a tartan grid which separates the structural columns and beams and the wall dimensions so that any increment or reduction of the sizes, okay, or the grid will not disrupt the structure itself. And then the second one is the structural frame, which uses bolts and nuts and specific metal hangers for the ease of assembly. And of course, the modular wall are designed to cater based on the local market sizes, which is a 4 by 8 feet and 2 by 8 feet. That simplifies more on the assembly process. And there are a variety of designs just based on that dimensions, which the users can select. And from the panels, the variety of panels given here, they are able to create their own elevations. Okay. The other concept or the principle that is also that needs to be observed is actually the modular floor, which is in section and it is supposed to be easy to insert into the floor frames so that all are much expedited during the assembly process. And the roof are all L angles, of which it receive roof trusses, and the connectors are actually using bolt and nuts so that it will promote reuse of the modular components in the system. So the options of RTA, due to its modularity, it is actually flexible. So the build-up area could be as whatever or at whatever the affordable users, the affordability of the users. So you can either start from big and then it can decrease, and all depending on what the users need. And at the same time, the options is also on the variety of the elevations given using different materials. So with all this, the experiment began we started the experiment for 4 days and tested it against 4 different groups. So for the 12 by 8 feet module, they managed to complete constructing it, well, more on assembling from the footing to the roof within 4 hours. So yeah, it was a good experiment, but it did not in 2010, after I've completed, it did not stop there. So from the experiment came the application, which is in 2015. We were approached by a lecturer. He's a doctor, a medical doctor, who has been involved with the indigenous people in Malaysia. A lot of the times he deals with the Semai tribes. So we established a team. We call ourselves Community Architecture Research Team, or CART, C-A-R-T. And we try to formulate the idea of looking into how to improve the living condition of the Semai tribes through this self-help housing by maximizing local resources. And of course, the catch here is the limited financial assistance. And you can see from the condition of the houses that we visited during those times are very much substandard. Some are nearly about to fall. Some of the walls are missing, potholes, and there were a lot of the times these are what they are used to. So we decided that, okay, if it's self-help, then we need to somehow mobilize people. So we at the same time we advertise to our students for those who are interested to participate as student volunteers. And yes, there were a few coming in, and the first village that we started to have our approach was in Kampung Batu 16 Tapah Perak. Kampung means village in Malay. And yeah, a lot of the drawings when we actually discuss are mostly done on site, because it has to be based on whatever the materials are accessible to them, and also the condition of the site, of which most of the plot given to us were on slope. So at the same time, we really need to be very detailed in identifying how many, the quantity, and what are the things needed that we use to build these houses, so that every single cent that is given on this for this project is accountable. For your information, the project was sponsored under, for this particular project, it was sponsored under Malaysia Medical Association, and hence the need for us to be very careful on our expenditure. So, of course, besides understanding the dire situation of the people of the Semai tribes, we were there to also understand what sort of construction are they used to. So, so we can see that a lot of the houses on the slopes are very much familiar with using of PVC pipes as their footings. This is to prevent the wide ends from going up, as well as it is more stable as compared to using timber. So okay, so we started to do the construction with our students, as well as some of the local communities. And there are a few things that our students also learn, as well as what the communities also learn from us. And yeah, once the footing are in place, of course, the frames would come up one by one. So yeah, these are just pictures of which once the concrete inside the PVC pipes are already near to harden, we started to put up all the frames and brace it. So the next morning, we had our floor frames spread out, and it became more sturdy, much stronger. And of course, later on, the whole unit, okay, once we had the plywood flooring installed, as well as the corrugated metals installed, all are much steady to even step on it. So this is actually the basic unit that we provide for them. Now, the idea why we give only the structure with the flooring and the roof cover is that we allow the end user to decide the envelope to cover their house, and also allow them to decide on where or how they want to place their own internal partitions. So for Kampung Batu 16, it is actually a bit higher up in the mountains. They have more access to bamboo. Hence, the envelope were more made of bamboos. But for those who, for the other kampungs that we were involved with, they had more access to bertam leaves. So they weave the bertams, and they have a different kind of finishing for that matter. And as you can see, it is not only having a sturdy, a durable material for the framing of the unit, but also for us to understand the type of patterns and the weaving process that is required from the Semai tribe. And this is just another example of which it is a display of many types of patterns using the bertam leaves. So yes, from here we have ever since in the village in Batu 16, we have started to understand a certain typology of buildings, or typology of housing that was involved based on their social needs and context. So we realized that when we provided a core unit, there was some integration, extension, and add-ons involved after 3 to 6 months upon completion of the shelter. So these are a few of the typologies of which that we looked into and tried to understand why they evolve or they add on in such a way. It is quite interesting to see that they try to replicate the same construction methods with their additional spaces, and they only add on. They also add on based on the terrain and the site that is available to them. Okay. So later on, later in 2018, 2019, we call our housing here Teratak Semai. Teratak meaning house, and Semai is actually the tribe. So it's actually the house of Semai. So there was some evolution from this structure itself. We started to look into the usage of galvanized iron, GI, as the main structure, and we tried to also build it for them for a few units of them. Yes, no doubt it is stronger and much easier and lighter, in a sense that it is quite quick in getting it built. But the response that I get from the head of the village and some from the people, even though they managed to cover it with the bamboo panels, they would still prefer timber structures, timber framings. This is due to the fact that by having timber, it is much easier for them to handle, especially they don't need machineries, so they can just use a simple sewing machine. Okay, so it started in our village, in the village, the first village that I showed you earlier. It started just with only 3 volunteers, And later on during the years from 2015 up till now, we had many more and many more that actually joined our program. So the hope, the hope for this year is that we, taking into consideration from the earlier experiment and the application that we have done for the since 2015, we decided that that the Teratak Semai should evolve into a much more beneficial for the people, meaning that there should be an autonomy in this housing procurement. What I meant here is that they should have more say or more power to produce their own components, their own panels, their own modular elements using timber. But in order to do so, they need to understand how to eliminate or to overcome a few things. For example, the bureaucracy of owning a house, also to plan their financial resources that is limited. And in terms of land regulation, because since for the Semai tribe or for the indigenous people, they have a different set of land regulation as compared to those that is in the city or in the town. So for that matter, a certain understanding on what they are allowed to should be given to them to choose. And of course, the last one is about their construction skills. It is just not providing the low technology of prefabrication, but also to promote their craftsmanship, which they are very good at, and so that they are proud to show such craftsmanship into their houses. So the upskilling of such craftsmanship should be encouraged. And there's also the idea of which we discussed in our group, the dissemination of knowledge on maximizing timber low technology should also be arranged, should be organized in modular programs. And of course, the opportunities to create local construction where they do not have to rely on contractors. I know contractors, they're going to hate me for this, but they should be given the chance to also should be given the chance to have more freedom in their construction methods. Okay, so this is what we have done for the past I think nearly really 8 years. And now since we were actually at limbo from 2020 to 2022 due to COVID, but hoping that in 2023 we will be able to do more for them, to encourage more empowerment in this housing sector. And we have so far constructed over 50 houses in one community hall, and mostly are situated in Perak. They are serving the Semai community. So you can see that from we explore timber frames with Bertam with panels, galvanized steel frames with bamboo panels, and we even for the community hall we even experiment concrete frames because it is more stable and more permanent with the hybrid materials using natural resources as well as the polycarbonate panels. Yes, so from community architecture research team, we have changed to a new naming, which we call ourselves Collaborative Action Research Team. So with that, I thank you, and these are some of the, you can check on our YouTube as well as website at cutupm.weebly.com. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Mohammed, do you want to say anything? No? Okay. Okay, thank you, the three presenters, that we have a delightful session of the three presentations, which incidentally is very much aligned on what we are trying to theme in this particular webinar that we run from the rural areas to the urban centers with traditional communities, to the villages with a very strong community sense of belonging, with much help from the volunteers. So we can start our Q&A sessions. First of all, I'd like to invite Mr. Ridha from Malaysia. He's the Heritage and Cultural Identity Working Group representative of Malaysia. Then we have Ms. Panshi. I think she's walked off at the moment, but she'd like to join the panel in a moment. And of course, we have with us our two co-directors, Mr. Mohammed and Mr. Kasim, to join us at the with the panel with all the other three presenters. Thank you. I hope all members of the audience are here. Yes, Hansi. Yes, I can see you. Welcome for joining the panel as well. Okay, so let's start. Okay, let's start our Q&A sessions. The first question is from the floor, is for Professor Law. The question is, he has got a question to Professor Law about what way can the Hani community way of living and constructing housing be applied to create resilient and climate adaptive design and new designs. I think he's referring to new designs, you know, with this, we've seen how the traditional huts and housings the houses be built. So how can this help our understanding and sustainable moving forward with these communities to adapt to the new environment? So up to you.
Okay, this is a very interesting and challenging question. Yes, we did do some design, new design work for the traditional house. It's a project of house renovation during the applying World Heritage Sites time. There are some shortage in traditional Hani houses. For example, the bedroom are too small, and the farm cattle are living with people. It's unhealthy, and the windows are too small. There are little natural light, and there are too much smoke when using the fire pit. So we do some modification to improve this problem, we expand the windows under the permission of construction to improve the natural light. And we move cattle outside of the house. We build a new house for the cattle. So the ground floor can be used to expand the space of traditional house. And then we expand the bedroom from about 4 square meters to 8 square meters. And then we add 2 bedrooms. So there are 4 bedrooms. So we as an architect, we can make some improvement for the traditional house and the local people. That's a new design for the local people. Yes. And in general speaking, we have to pay attention to tradition, because tradition is shrinking and vanishing, even in a World Heritage Site, because the people have to find jobs in the urban or cities. So the local people, the numbers of the local people are reducing. So we have to pay attention to all the tradition, and we have to find all our way to conserve or even enhance their tradition to deal with the problem. So can we do something more? We are still in stage of exploring or trying. So we will be pleased to communicate more with our international colleagues. That's my answer to this question. Okay, Edward.
Okay, thank you. Anybody would like to follow up on that view? Okay, maybe I can move to the next question that raised on the floor.
No,
That is for, okay.
Edward. Yeah, okay. It is interesting that it's from the contemporary perspective or the tradition we already have, the modernity. It is really hard to understand that what we are going to take from the tradition. So in that case, Nuo's presentation was mainly based on the lifestyle. It means when we, the contemporary people, generally think about architecture, is more on the built form. So if we can go beyond that things, then we can explore many things of our society. And human being is that. Means we are not just any animal. We have to explore the society, the neighborhood, the nature around us. And if we can incorporate these things to our architecture, then generally architecture will evolve and goes towards that new era. So definitely we have to go to the tradition to understand these things, because we have not evolved our traditional architecture. So it is the time to understand from there, the nature, the society, the neighborhood, the things. So that was the essence of his presentation, as I understand. So thank you and thanks. Edward, you may continue, please. Your microphone is off now.
Edward, you mute.
Sorry. Okay. Sure, we will come back to this question in a moment. So I'd like to raise the second questions from the floor, which I'll read out now. This is for Athena. The question is, developers are typically profit-driven and not really averse to potential penalties. Wonder if the Hong Kong government or any local authorities were given prizes or awards to private developers' project for good design, championing the good aspects that you've spoken of, and might it work? I think that would be a very good question for Athena, as I know her for a number of years. She has been working on the field of sustainable architecture for the community for some time. I'm sure that she can give a good insight on that. Up to you.
And thank you for the question. Yeah, thank you for the question. This is a really, really good question to pose. Have to start with Hong Kong have an extremely complicated building system. So disregard whether the developer is greedy or not, whether they have good intention or bad intention to do a good design for the neighborhood. The Hong Kong complexity in terms of the system is because of the lands department, the planning department, and also the building department. So we have all the different sort of regime controlling the development in any area in Hong Kong. So this is especially complex in urban renewal site, which is old district, because in this kind of old district, there is no one single developer own the whole area, meaning you would take a really, really long time if even someone have the good intention to be develop the places. In order to give a holistic neighborhood design, he will have to find a way to acquire like all the existing building and kick away the tenant, etc. And it would be extremely difficult for any developer to go for this direction. And I think in a more sustainable way, for this kind of like old district redevelopment, I think it have to be a collaborative design, not just from the private developer sector, but also like from the government as well. It have to sort of be a co-design process or with a vision from the government to push it downward and enforce it to the community, to the developer, and all have to follow the proposal. So I think like for this large development project, it will always be good to have like a large scale public consultation, not just to professional, but also to the local community in order to truly understand what the people want. And what more important is we always have this sort of consultation in Hong Kong, but the underlying question is like how much of this opinion have been reflected into the actual implementation. I think this is the really challenging part that worth all of us to have a second thought how to implement whatever we come up with. So it's not about like whether the developer get good design award or not. It always need a motivation and a vision from a bigger body to spread to the designer and any design professional in order to have the vision and to try to push and fight for something really challenging happening in this kind of old district. Because talking about the redevelopment value in this old district is huge amount, and there's no private developer would do it like a charity. And I think we have to live with this fact. So in a more realistic or practical point of view, I think it have to be a win-win situation. The developer will have to have the motivation to get what they want, but then the resident, the neighborhood, and the Hong Kong people, they would be able also to enjoy the benefit of having a nicely redeveloped new neighborhood rather than like just rushing to redevelop and demolish everything in the whole area just for the sake of redevelopment. So I think Hong Kong is a really extremely fast-paced city. They will have to be really patient to wait for a good strategy before they demolish everything. But quite often, like in all the past cases in our city, is before come up with a really nice idea or an idea that everyone agree with, the places have already been gone and everything have been demolished and replaced by really typical private gigantic and massive development, which have happened for many years. And the same typologies just keep repeating in Hong Kong. And this is the reason why I'm doing this study and research in the last summer, because I think once the old district are gone, it's gone forever, and there's nothing we could recreate or save them back. So before more audit rate going to disappear from our city, which is a tiny city in Hong Kong anyway. We will try our best to preserve it in different way. And I think like beside the developer or the architect, I think education and also learning from what other country or city have been doing in preservation or conservation is a huge learning for the people in our city to know what we should treasure beside we are just like going for something really commercial and just redevelop for the sake of redevelopment and without having a really serious consideration of what should we do better than the previous like urban renewal project. We have done it before. Yeah. So that's my sharing for this.
Okay, thank you, Athena. That is very enlightening. I'm sure we will continue this discussion maybe also when we meet in again with the rest of the group in Copenhagen later. So there are other questions. Andrew, do you like to pick up some of these questions and read it out for our other presenters?
Okay, sure. So we are on to the third question. This is for Professor Luo and Dr. Wan. Is there a particular reason for selecting relatively rural locations, communities for studies, exercises on resilience design? So you can take your turn and answer the question, please.
So after you, Dr. Wan.
Oh, okay. I'll go first then. All right. Right. The question is about selecting rural locations or communities. This, like I mentioned earlier, that the experiment, when we did the experiment, I had to compare a few types of housing approaches that are available in Malaysia. So based on that, the way I read the data is that there were quite a number of applications that wanting houses, but they are not able to build. They can't afford to build, but most of them are in the rural area. So coincidentally, when the application period, which is in 2015, we were approached by this professor in the medical faculty to look into the tribes, the Semai tribes in Malaysia, which is in rural. So it is like a coincident phenomena that happened, and it just all click in. So that's how from the experiment to the application, and it just happened the way it is. There was a question before. A friend asked whether is it possible at all to have the same principle, the same concept to be applied in the city, in the urban areas. And for your information, Walter Seagull has had this self-help approach. Actually, he did it in London itself. But the way he did it is so structured that they were able to pool for those who wanting to own a house, to build their own house, using this self-help approach, the Seagull method. They managed to get to approach the London local council to look into any of the land that is maybe in outside of zone 5 or 6 of the London area that is available for them to rent. So it is possible if we do have it in the city or in township, if you're looking in that direction. But for now, even trying to address housing issues for the community, right now the tribes, the application for this sort of housing is it has reached over thousands. The moment we have managed to advertise ourselves to tell that there is another way to own a house, to build your own house, they started to approach us. So even that alone is a lot to handle, let alone those in the city who are actually struggling to own a house. So that is my, I hope that actually satisfy the answer for architect Ping. Yeah, okay, Prof. Lau.
Okay, it's my turn. Okay. I think in my research in different places or different title, there are different special point. Sometimes it is on resilience design. Sometimes it's not so resilient design. For a Hani traditional house and their community, yes, there are some technological or architectural way to use to show their resilience design. For example, they use local materials, they use soils, they use wood. These all materials they can obtain from around, and based on the local materials, they form the local technology for the construction of wood, for the rammers. So, but these local materials and local technology can be seen in many places in the world. So what's the most special point in Hani traditional house and community? We found that they are more anthropological than architectural or technological. So we use anthropological thinking when we were doing our research work. So there you can see in my PowerPoint there are many points about anthropological on and social problem behind the phenomena of architecture. So anthropological problem is the most special point in our research in Hani traditional house. So this is my response to this question.
Yes, thank you. I'm sure this question, heritage and in this very rural community, how we can actually preserve, while we see most of the laymen, it will be just trees and fields, how to do the heritage. That is conservation is what we all need to learn in this coming climatic change. So we are running a little bit tight on time, but I think we still have 2 more questions. I think that we can still run through them. Andrew, do you like to read through one of them?
Okay. There's a very interesting question from Miss Athena from Tanjina Khan. While conducting these case observations, did you perform any social income analysis? And did the investigation uncover any interior design criteria for buildings?
Thank you. I'm glad like someone raised this question. Yes, actually, I have did social income analysis because like the 3 neighborhood that I chose, the people income level are quite different. The old district for sure, like the income level are much lower, while the public housing one is sort of like middle range. And for the private sector development, the income is much higher. And actually, beside the financial status, I have also like looked into their health status as well, because like the health of the people, because the target group I'm looking at is anyone about 65. So the health status would be quite critical in terms of their active level in the society, as well as the usage of all the public facility. That's why I have a big list of background information collect, but because like the time today, so I'm not able to like present like some of those findings. And regarding the interior design criteria building, In my current study, I haven't really touched on to this because it's quite challenging as I'm not able to get access into the different apartment in order to do the field observation. Even some of them are quite typical in Hong Kong. I sort of have an idea, but then it would need a much longer like pool of people in order to collect enough sample to start like defining the characteristic of an interior design criteria. And also like interior design are more subjective. Therefore, or not more subjective, but it's more like micro within the building. So in my previous study, I'm more focused on the external area, which is like the building masses, the form of it, how that interact with the environment. So in the previous study I did, it's mostly on an exterior aspect. But the interior one is definitely something I'm really interested in looking at as well. But I would have to see like how would I able to like get the right kind of data and access and to the environment. Yes, thank you.
Thank
Okay,
you.
we're
There
running.
yeah, lots more questions
sorry.
coming.
Yeah, we're running a little bit late on time, so maybe we just take a very quick final question for Dr. Wan about the rammed earth. Okay, the audience is asking how do the people carry out rammed earth in the climate in Malaysia? Maybe we can have a very quick answer to that.
Yeah, sure. Okay, we have tested actually using the Adobe material in one of the villages in Pahang, using but with a different tribes, indigenous tribes, but of a different group. Unfortunately, to my observation, it is not a success due to the fact that the type of Adobe that was given was actually transported to their village. First and foremost, the distance and into the village is quite far, and they can only allow a certain a size of vehicle to enter due to the fact that they do not have a good access route system. So because of that, there were a few hundreds of times going back in and out to carry the Adobe bricks blocks into the village. So I would still believe that lightweight construction and something that is very much manageable using simple tools to build houses. It's just that a matter of making them understand that when you use timber, there are many ways of detailings that they can actually explore. So yeah, that's my actually opinion on Adobe bricks. Okay, thank you.
Yes, absolutely. The that traditional material is what we modern architects have to learn more in order to preserve the environment and to preserve the traditional communities. No doubt we will talk about more on that when we meet again in Copenhagen. So this is nearly the end of this webinar, and may I pass it to Mr. Kasim to give a few words of wisdom to all of us.
Thank you, Edward, and thank you, Anju, for steering our webinar ably and actually according quite a good platform for the to our presenters. Just before I give my thanks to all the speakers and all the parties that were involved in today's webinar, probably I'll just wish to recap a few points that I gleaned from the presentations. And I'll start off by the fact that given that this webinar was about designing for climate adaptation and resilience, I think Professor Lu gave us quite a good opening in the sense that he gave us the traditional management systems pertaining to China, especially as regards to that rural setting in terms of the agriculture and building technology. And one aspect that stood out was the fact that we can learn a lot from traditional, not only techniques or building systems, but the same systems offer a lot of lessons into how we can be able to adapt the same for resilience. And this was ably demonstrated by Dr. Wan in her presentation, where she came up with the RTA system, where it shows a lot of scalability in terms of how communities can be able to actually adapt and scale up depending on their needs, offering more freedom and inclusivity in the process, while at the same time ensuring affordable and safe neighborhoods. And the issue of safe neighborhoods and inclusivity also featured in the second presentation by Athena, where she came upon with the requirement that public authorities should aim at improvements to public realm of the environment, especially in all neighborhoods, while ensuring at the same time that there is ample inclusion by coming up with systems that improve the neighborhood communities by bringing down barriers that bar or deter social inclusion, which was quite a good takeaway from the presentation. More on the same, the presentation by Dr. Wan also alluded to the fact that we can be able to come up or rather adopt traditional systems, make them actually interpret them in a modern way, in ways in which it can be flexible, scalable, and also local, maximize local resources for the communities concerned, ensuring that each individual has autonomy in how they bring about housing and how they procure the same, while at the same time also upscaling or rather improving the critical components leading to that kind of procurement or rather construction, by ensuring that there is the upskilling of craftsmanship, which also needs to be upscaled in the sense that my co-director alluded to the fact that we need to learn, but not only learning, we need also to readapt and find ways in which that old or rather traditional technology can be improved and be adapted in current modern settings. Finally, there is the issue of creation of local communities or rather local construction opportunities that was touched on by Dr. Wan, which is critical if these things will be made sustainable in the long run. We need to have not only the technology in place, which has been upscaled and upskilled, but at the same time have vibrant entities that take up these opportunities and carry them forward. Thank you. I wish to thank all our presenters, starting off with Professor Lu, then Dr. Wan and Athena for your very informative presentations, and thank you for your time to be able to come and sit with us and share with us in the 2 hours that we had this webinar. I also wish to thank our other panelists, Sipan, Ahmed Rida, and also my work program members and ably moderators for today, Edward and Anju, my co-director, last but not least, staff at the UAA Secretariat led by Claudia, then also our Secretary General who laid out the opening foundation for this webinar. All of them, we wish to give a hearty thanks for making this possible, and hope to meet again in the UAA World Congress, where we'll have more activities planned for the architecture community. Thank you, and bye to all. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Okay, goodbye.
Thank you. Goodbye. Looking forward to seeing you again.
Good night.
Let's meet in Copenhagen, all of us.
Oh, that would be great.